Hello everyone, this video is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we are having a look at the game between Leela-Stoofvlees and Stoofvlees from the TCEC Swiss. This game is a wonderful exposition of a very important positional theme, and that is exchanging off the opponent's active pieces and leaving him with passive pieces. It's also a very convincing way of meeting the Scandinavian defence. So white e1 e4 players should also take a good look at this game. Let's start. So 1 e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, queen a5, d4, knight f6, knight f3, c6, still in the TCC book. Castles, e6, bishop d2 and bishop b4. And this is the TCC book exit, and you know, black can be reasonably satisfied. I mean, the most aggressive plans for white in the Scandinavian involve targeting the bishop on f5 very early, and that's normally to do with playing knight e5 and playing g4, and then afterwards castling queenside. So the early kingside castling that cuts out most of those plans. Bishop b4, well, that looks like it's going to cost black the bishop pair, because you know, after a3 you'll probably play bishop takes c3. But on the other hand, you know, that is a very typical Scandinavian plan. You exchange off the dark squared bishop for this knight, and then you get control of the e4 square, which you can use, you know, either with a light squared bishop or with a knight. So in general, that's not too bad for black. What I really like about Leela's play here is that it shows, you know, how do you create play in these Scandinavian positions when you haven't played the most critical line right from the opening. And what Leela notices is that, yeah, you know, at this early stage, the biggest targets that it has are the two black bishops, which are you know, developed quite aggressively. So what it really tries to get there is the advantage of two bishops against two knights. That's how what it tries to turn its advantage of the first move into. And it starts off with knight h4, which is not a common move in this position, but very, very logical. Now, Stoofvlees played bishop g4, which is the riskiest of the two options that black has, but, well, we're not going to be surprised about that if Stoofvlees is playing. I mean, bishop g6 was the safer alternative. And, yeah, I mean, this was a typical game. You know, I was playing a lot of engine matches between, for example, Komodo and Stockfish. This is a typical game. Rook e1, bishop h5, you know, black resists just a little bit with the two bishops, but, you know, white gets them in the end. Queen g3 takes, rook d1, queen g2, queen f3, and then h4, something like this. And, you know, these positions with two bishops against two knights, in principle, are, you know, very pleasant for white. I mean, Stockfish and Komodo were holding these with black, you know, without too much difficulty, but I mean, from a human point of view, I would take white every single time. Yeah, I mean, quite interesting there. I mean, Stoofvlees' move, bishop g4, I mean, this bishop will get caught in principle by the knight on h4, but what Stoofvlees is trying for is f3, bishop h5, is trying to ensure that white will have to play g4 in order to catch it and force the bishop back to g6. Yeah, is that a weakness, or is that, you know, a couple of free tempi for white to advance the kingside pawns? Well, you know, only time will tell. Yeah, in principle, I'd prefer to have white, you know, and I'd be happy to have the chance to play f3 and g4. But it does open some tactical possibilities, and well, this was presumably part of Stoofvlees' plan. And it's a very clever plan. So after bishop h5, white played a3. So this one's caught. You'll get that one eventually. You know it after g4, knight g6. So now white aims for this bishop, and well, you can't just retreat it to e7, for example. Well, there's a bit of danger here for a discovered attack by the knight on c3. Not immediately, funnily enough, because after here we go queen d8, queen takes d4, queen takes c4, and that knight on e7 has a few little problems. But actually after bishop e7 we play g4, bishop g6 and g5, and well, the knight can't come to d5 because of knight takes d5. So you go knight fd7, knight d5, f4, And well, yeah, these now you see that these pawns have been very useful. I mean, f5 is coming in. The line of the bishop will get opened again. Very dangerous position for black. I mean, I say very dangerous. The engine's already assessing it at +3. So yeah, by human standards you just say very dangerous. By engine standards, it's completely won already. So what Stoofvlees did though was very clever. And it all fits together with this bishop g4 plan. Stoofvlees played queen d8. And yeah, you're hitting this loose pawn on d4. That's caused by the knight moving to h4. And, well, you're going to take on d4 with check. That's caused by, teasing out this f3 idea. But here Leela played a very nice pawn sacrifice, queen e2. Now you wouldn't actually have to take it with black, but it doesn't make much sense if you if you don't. So Stoofvlees took on d4, bishop on e3 takes, a takes b4 castles, and now rook fd1. A very quiet, normal developing move that actually contains a drop of poison here. It threatens rook d4, trapping the queen. And in fact, if you're looking at what is white's compensation for the pawn, you really see that it's pretty big, really. We've got the two bishops, lots of weak dark squares, rather undeveloped queenside. Even the a7 pawn is hanging, and these two pieces are, well, both in danger of getting trapped and also yeah, in the way of tempi gain by the kingside pawn. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty tempting, really. Stoofvlees played bishop g6, knight d5 is the other way to do it. And here, in my engine games, yeah, Stockfish did a very nice squeeze against Komodo here, Komodo Dragon. Just going for the exchange of queens, and then afterwards just gradually expanding. You can imagine afterwards c4 came in at some stage and black just had no play whatsoever. It was a very impressive and very smooth game. So yeah, not particularly pleasant for black. So bishop g6 was played by Stoofvlees, rook d4, queen h5, and now rook a5. And well, when I was just playing through the game, first of all, I saw that black played b5, which in principle is positionally horrific. You're really weakening all of these queenside dark squares permanently, giving white some fantastic outposts for his pieces. Why on earth b5? Why not a move like knight d5? Well, I have to say I was quite surprised by the solution. It was knight takes d5, takes, bishop takes d5, takes, f5, and now this beautiful move b5. And yeah, I mean, the knight on b8 is completely restricted. The rook on a8 then as well. And yeah, I mean, look at those bishop on g6, queen on h5. Black's going to have to waste time in order to even get them free. And the nice point about it is it's also showing a lovely theme of the opposite colored bishops. I mean, we saw this very heavily with AlphaZero, and all the neural nets after have been very keen on opposite colored bishop positions. And if you just go knight c6, I can just take it, takes back, and actually material is even. But yeah, I mean, I've got the 7th rank. I'll get the a1 h8 diagonal for my dark square bishop, and black's got nothing to oppose it. So yeah, I mean, beautiful, judgment, and also very typical of the neural nets there. So I mean, this was what just showing you Leela's main line here. Bishop d7 takes, bishop f4, and the beautiful thing about it is that this bishop has to stay really on here to be a barrier to the rook. But yeah, it just means that at some stage white is going to have bishop b8 and rook takes d7. Actually, after queen c5, Stockfish wanted to play c4, keep the bind for a bit longer. Leela 40b wanted to just take here and just claim that this major piece endgame with equal material, but with a huge advantage of the 7th rank for white and the open 7th rank for black as well, that this was just a massive advantage for white. And yeah, I mean, absolutely true, I think. So after rook a5, Stoofvlees played b5, and now rook d6 from white. And yeah, I mean, what I love about this is that there's some very big themes about sacrifices and constricting the black pieces, and also very simple stuff as well. And that's sometimes, the thing that's kind of hard when you're playing these games as humans, when do you aim for tiny goals and when do you aim for the big strategical goals? What do I mean by that? Well, simply, that if you play knight bd7, it's simply, the refutation is simply rook takes c6. We take the c pawn, and we're going to go rook takes b5, and then we'll be a pawn up. Nothing complicated, nothing amazing all of a sudden, just simple moves. But against a lot of other black possibilities, you've got to be prepared to sacrifice even more pawns. And I think that's the kind of flexibility that's that's difficult for humans to find when they're playing over the board, with limited time. Certainly, what tends to happen when I play, quite intricate strategical games is that, often end up missing some small tactic in some line, and whether the opponent spots it or not, that's kind of the determines whether I win a game or not. But obviously for Leela, no such problems. Rook d6, just tying down the rook to the knight to b8. And again, we saw this so often in AlphaZero Stockfish games that Stockfish 8, of course, that a knight on b8 was getting tied down. Here it can't move because the c6 pawn, and that has a knock-on effect because the rook on a8 is tied down. And what's the knock-on effect of those two pieces being out of play? Well, stuff like the 8th rank being weak, because you've only got one rook to cover the 8th rank rather than the normal two. And it's those sort of positional factors, factoring in all the consequences to them, that the neural nets do so amazingly. And I think that was the basis of the difference between AlphaZero and Stockfish 8. Quite unusual to see this difference though in games between neural nets, I have to say. So Queen e5 was played. Bishop c5, and this is example of the theme that I've talked about, and this was again one of those noticeable things about AlphaZero's play against Stockfish 8, and you see it now with all of the best engines nowadays, Stockfish, Komodo, Leela as well, that all able to just give up material just in terms for a mobility advantage, and then just keep on swapping off pieces and just draining the activity from the opponent's position. And here, the queen was a troublemaker, so you exchange it. Bishop c5 takes. It's not intuitive to exchange off material when you're ahead, but it's just that judgment call that the reduction in black's activity is worth more than your reduction in firepower. So, note also that the c2 pawn is hanging. For the moment, that's not a crucial threat because bishop c2, rook d2 is a discovered attack, wins the exchange. But, I think, Leela wasn't particularly bothering about this c2 pawn at any stage. So a6 played by Stoofvlees. And now a really lovely move, f4. And I didn't actually grasp the whole point of this. I thought, okay, f4, stopping. We're just, preparing to advance the kingside pawns like that. But there's another point to it. It's not only starting to build up a front of kingside pawns. We've squeezed on the queen side, and now we're going to build up an advantage on the other side. It also frees the f3 square for this light squared bishop. So there's also an increase in activity for white. And so if you just play a quiet move like rook c8, I play bishop f3. And, a move like bishop c2 allows knight b5, which is very painful. Just exploiting, the pin that you've created along this diagonal and also the pin that existed along the a file. But what I was thinking actually was that after bishop f3, we could go bishop h5. If white plays this g4 idea, g4 you may ask, well, I'll explain that in the game later. Then we've actually got a tempo gain. We've got this extra move, rook c8. But now you actually see what is white trying to do, and the idea is again linked to this: swap off all black's active pieces and leave black with passive pieces. Because the idea of bishop f3 also is to play this move knight e4. And after bishop f3 takes, g takes f3, black is completely paralyzed. Only bad pieces. And actually, even this king is weak because you're going to bring a rook along to the g file. And king f8 is impossible because of rook takes c6 check, discovered attack. So I mean, this is really, again, I've seen some wonderful AlphaZero games about exchanging the opponent's active pieces, but I think this one's probably an even better example of this, because Leela is doing it consistently from start to finish. And but I also have to say that to make clear that Stockfish as well, when you're giving it these positions even from afar, it's that same positional judgment, that fantastic positional judgment that's not caring about material, just mobility of the pieces. So really amazing what the top engines can do nowadays, because I understand the themes and all that, but to come up with them by myself, that would be tough. But you just hope, and this is why you analyze games like this. It's the same thing as analyzing classic games from the past. You're building up, your toolbox of these positional themes, and having evocative examples like that, examples that will not leave your head because they are so fantastic. That really increases the chance of finding them yourself during your games. So I mean, yeah, remember these, and remember this next move as well. I mean, I almost want to do an engine snack on this one because it's such a great move. Because after bishop h5, white played g4, and well, I haven't tried it with the latest version of Koivisto. This was only Koivisto 7.0. But yeah, even with 94 threads, Koivisto didn't get this idea. Was only Stockfish and Leela, and I think Komodo got it as well. I'm not sure I tested it on that, but I'm sure Komodo would as well. What on earth is the idea of g4? Well, think back to bishop f3. We're just doing the same idea, but with a pawn less. Bishop g4, bishop takes g4, knight g4, and now knight e4. What is this knight doing? It is stopping this black knight from getting back to activate itself actually on the d5 square. That's where black would really want that knight. If you look at what a game of Koivisto 7s then against Stockfish, bishop h5, knight h5, g3, knight f6, rook a1, h6, king f2, rook c8, rook d1, knight d5. You're just going to see this enormous difference with the game. Here we have a knight on d5 blocking the d-file, preventing these rooks from getting active. In the game, that just doesn't happen. I mean, I do actually think that probably this very moment with g4, I think if an engine can spot this, and probably from afar as well, something like 4 or 5 moves earlier, then it's really at the top elite level. I think this this is one of those moves, actually like Leela's 14b5 against defense chess, which is really making the difference between the top engines, the very top engines, and the astonishingly strong but second tier engines. It's really truly superhuman play. So g4 takes, knight g4, knight e4. What happens after knight f6? Well, we can give you some examples here. Rook a3. I mean, actually, this is kind of even better for white than not a pawn down. In the other position, we had a pawn on f3. Here, the rook's mobility is even quicker, even greater. And what do we get? h6, rook g3 check, bishop d4, takes, bishop f6, a5, rook d8 check. We play b takes a5 after, and you're completely tied down. Total domination from... this is Stockfish against Leela, a little test game there, but which I put after knight f6. So, complete carnage. So, Stockfish plays knight h6. And, for all white's amazing play, the position's still not lost. White's in complete control. But how do you push this through? I mean, the fact that you've given away so many pawns means you've no longer really got any pawn breaks at all. And this is always the problem. I mean, somehow, in some way, you notice this with AlphaZero's play very much. A lot of these plans are quite static somehow. It's all about giving away pawns or putting pawns into static positions in order to cement a mobility advantage. But do you have enough? And also, exchanging off these the active pieces, leaving with passive pieces. You're often going to a sort of a static position with reduced firepower. Do you have enough to finish it off? And this is a very valid question here, really, but again, it's all about expected score, percentage chances, and your percentage chances of winning are very high here. But essentially, white will need to to create the final blow, white will need to do that with pieces. And actually, what he's going to do, he's going to need to move this rook from a5 and actually invade along the d file. And obviously we've been very careful now. We've stopped the knight getting to f6 to d5, so now this d file, we can use it to invade. But when we play the rook away from a5, that might give black some chances to free itself on the queen side. That's, it's playing these sort of positional games, really looks like squashing jelly somehow. You try and squash it down evenly, but there's always one bit that comes up. And yeah, that is the bit that comes up. You go rook a1 to bring the rook into the d file and invade, but black does get that chance to free itself with a5. So how does that work out? Rook d3, rook e8, knight d6. We know why this is. Swap off this active black knight and leave black only with incredibly passive pieces. And yeah, I mean, what I was really amazed about was that Stoofvlees, which is normally so active, didn't play the move a5 to free itself. I mean, I think this would be, the absolute only human reaction that you would see, in any reasonably strong player. Because there's, that you're never going to survive for forever, and you just have to go for activity. But it's quite subtle in actual fact. I mean, Koivisto played rook a5, Koivisto 7 played rook a5, and here Stockfish found an amazing idea. I mean, I did think that this one should be losing, to be honest, but yeah, Stockfish was already very, very, comfortable and happy with this position, and it found this incredible idea, which obviously had not occurred to me at all. Just rook d2, and then we just give a little perpetual here along the second rank. I don't think I've ever seen this one before. So and all done by playing this pawn to f5 as well. Just really, really clever. Well, b takes a5 is a better move. Knight a6, bishop b6. But now both Dragon against Stockfish and Stockfish against Leela, they managed to hold this position as black. I mean, these are rather fast games. Probably I was playing them maybe 15 minutes or something, but starting from this position, so plenty of time to play them. And yeah, the Stockfish Komodo games were on 94 threads, so big machines really. But they managed to hold these positions, playing the move c5, c3, and then white wants to play b3 in this position, and meet c4 with b4, which protects the a5 pawn and takes away the c5 square from the knight. So c4, absolutely key. And well, I'll just show you the Leela Stockfish game that was played, and somehow Stockfish managed to get this position and just wait and hold it. Yeah, again, as always with these things that Stockfish holds, it's not, this is a lovely move, rook c5 with a little fork on there. Again, it's not clear to me, why would this hold, and I would lose it in multiple ways. But rook takes c4 allows rook takes a5. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a very, very difficult defense. But yeah, Komodo managed to hold this as black against Stockfish. So it's possibly still not completely lost, but obviously extremely difficult. But what Stoofvlees did was very passive, really, and Leela just calmly brings the king into play, and after g6, by now it already looks a little bit late for a5 breaks. These were all leading to wins for white. After a5, Leela went rook takes a5. I mean, you're getting nice extra checks on the 7th rank, to get your pieces working. So everything just really speeds up, and of course the king is stopping the rook from getting active at all. So I mean, it's really the white position's just improved enormously. But I mean, Leela just got this position and just ground it basically. Nobody's quite sure why or how Leela managed to do it, but ground this position, and well, Stockfish won this position very quickly as well. So it looks like essentially black doesn't have enough time. I mean, at some stage you move the knight to a6, we take on c6, and white's just much better placed than before. I mean, Stoofvlees carried on, rather passively, and then this move comes in, bishop b6, and the point is you're controlling a5, so a5, b takes a5, so that means that your rook can come to the d file, and you're going to play rook d8. Stoofvlees decided to give up the exchange in this way. But I mean, this is never going to be anything at all. I mean, you've just got masses of activity and masses of rooks and masses of pawns, really. So there was a little bit of a flurry of activity there, but Leela doesn't mess this stuff up. Leela's just very, very solid in these positions, and won without much difficulty. We'll just show how it is. I mean, for a human player in a blitz finish, this would probably have been a little bit scary, but Leela just doesn't worry at all, and finished it off very cleverly. Rook A2, a little consolidating move at the right moment, and then the pawns look scary, but we're not scared at all because Rook C8 is coming in. So there we are. I mean, a truly magnificent game, and I have to say there have been some absolutely wonderful games in the TCEC Swiss from all sorts of engines. But Leela, I think, has played particularly well here. I think this was a very nice pawn sacrifice with Queen E2. The judgment was fantastic. The moves that came out after Rook A5, Rook D6 were very, very nice. And I mean, this G4 move was simply astonishing positional judgment. And and beautiful. And Stoofvlees didn't quite put up a stockfish level defense, and just one missed chance, I think, to hold it to a clear disadvantage for Black, and then Stoofvlees was completely lost. Truly wonderful game from Leela. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you liked the video, why not give it a like or even subscribe to the channel? Even take a look at the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, my new book, which has got masses of beautiful games like this. I mean, otherwise, just keep on watching. Thanks very much for watching the video, and hopefully see you with the next one. Thanks for watching.